So in this video we're going to have a look at poverty and social responsibility in the novel A Christmas Carol. We're going to look at how that theme is presented by Dickens. We'll look a little bit into some context and some of Dickens's own ideals, and then we'll look at the character of the Cratchit family and how they're used to discuss these themes as well. So first of all, money. Dickens is saying in this novel that money is no guarantee of happiness. There are a whole range of different relationships with money in this novella, from having lots of money to having very little of it. So first of all, we've got Scrooge. He's probably the most well-off character in the novel. He's got a lot of money, but he hoards it, he doesn't share it, and as a result of that, he is miserable and lives alone, no friends, and no real family that he has got connections with. After Scrooge, probably the most well-off character is Fezziwig, who we meet with the ghost of Christmas Past. He's also got a lot of money, but he shares it freely, unlike Scrooge. As a result, he's very happy, he's got lots of friends, he's got a loving family. So, big difference in both the relationship and how that affects his life. Next, we've got Fred, who is apparently very poor, but spends a lot of his money on Christmas and on celebrating the holidays. He's also very happy, married, lots of friends, as we see in the visits to his house. So how poor is he? We can't really know, we just know that in Scrooge's opinion, he is poor. Then we've got the Cratchits, who are definitely very poor, but also spend a lot of their money on Christmas. Spend a lot of money on food and celebrating together. They're very happy as they can be with the life that they have. And then we've got characters like Old Joe, who we see with the ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. He's also very poor, but he is trying to better his life, trying to improve his lot by stealing from the dead Scrooge. He's potentially not very happy, but he is surrounded by others. Are they friends? Are they just associates? We don't really know that. But all of these characters have different relationships with money and different relationships with people as a result. So this leads us on to the two characters of Ignorance and Want, who we meet at the end of stave 3. So they are symbols. They're very symbolic. We have the Victorian ideals of children, how children are innocent and angelic-like beings. Victorians cared a lot about the suffering of children. We had the beginning of child labour laws when Dickens was around, how many hours children could work, and how long they could be in education, those kind of things. However, these children are the absolute opposite of what you would expect. Dickens says, where graceful youth should have filled their features out, a stale and shrivelled hand like that of age had pinched and twisted them. That's the description of them at the end of stave 3. So while we expect innocent angelic children, these have been injured, destroyed by the society that they're living in. They're symbolic of that damage done by a lack of education. They represent all of the young in society. The ghost says, beware them both and all of their degree, saying we have to look out for these children because the damage that we are doing to them is being done to all of them. They're also a metaphor that ignorance, in particular, may be a man's downfall. The ghost also says, beware of all, most of all beware this boy, for on his brow I see that written which is doom, unless the writing be erased. So in this point, Dickens is saying our actions must change or society will fall to ignorance. So what is Dickens saying here? He's saying it's not money that's bad, it's the attitude you have towards it that causes harm to people. It's Scrooge's greed and his desire for money that makes him mean, not the money itself. He mistreats Bob right at the start of the novel by making him work in poor conditions. He doesn't pay him enough because he loves money. He says to Bob, if I was to stop a half-crown for it, you'd think yourself ill-used, talking about giving him Christmas Day off. So he's unhappy that he has to give him a paid day off work because of his greed. He also pushes Belle away because, in her words, another idol has displaced me. The master passion gain engrosses you. So his love for money and his greed to collect more of it pushes her away and makes her realise that he doesn't love her as much as she thought he did. So, whose problem is it? Money, greed, sharing with the poor. Who is responsible for this? The answer is twofold. First of all, we have the individual responsibility for it. So, Scrooge is responsible for his own misery, as we've just looked at, his rejection of Belle, also his rejection of Fred. His behaviour to others means no one grieves his death. He caused poor working conditions for Bob, thereby causing him to be poor. His treatment of Bob also impacts Tiny Tim. So there is a level of personal responsibility, but Dickens is also suggesting that the responsibility is all of ours. Simply paying our taxes, supporting prisons and workhouses is not enough. They're not the solution. Okay, he doesn't suggest what is, but he is saying that everyone has caused these problems. It's up to everyone to fix them. The ghost says, "Spirit, are they yours? They are man's." So ignorance and want are man as a race's problem. So some of this comes from Dickens' upbringing. Big impact on his point of view in this novel. So as he was alive, he saw that the rich were dismissive of the problem of poverty. They didn't worry about it. It didn't concern them, so it wasn't their problem. Dickens believed it was a social responsibility. It was a responsibility of all of society to change it. He noticed the Christmas attitude, the Christmas spirit, and he felt that it should be that same spirit all year round. The idea of giving and caring for your fellow man should be a year-round thing. And this comes in part from his own upbringing. His own father was imprisoned when he was a child, so his education was cut short and he was sent to work in a factory at 12 years old. So he knew firsthand about the damages of poverty on education and on your upbringing. He believed in education and charity for all. During the 19th century, between 1800 and 1900, the population in London grew from approximately 1 million to approximately 6 million. That's a phenomenal increase, which led to all of this poverty. So, characters in the novel who represent the Cratchits. As a family, they are used to illustrate the social problems caused by poverty. Each character is significant in their own way. They all have their own suggestions and they all represent poverty in a different way. So first of all, we've got Bob, who obviously is badly treated by Scrooge, as we've already seen. Works for very little pay, gets days off few and far between by the look of things, and is symbolic of the working man in Victorian England. We've also got Mrs. Cratchit, who does the best that she can in the situation they're in. She doesn't have very much money, but what she does have, she uses to make sure her family have a nice Christmas. So of the children, we've got Peter, who likes the idea of being upper class. He daydreams of the day when he can show his linen in the fashionable parks, as Dickens says, so he imagines himself socialising with those upper class. He looks forward to the job Bob's arranged for him, even though he tries to hide his excitement from the rest of the family. When he's told about this possible job, he's deliberating what particular investments he could favour. So where could he put his money? What will he do with all of those wages that, even though they're not very big, to him seem like a fortune? There's also Martha, who's the oldest daughter, who is a poor apprentice at a milliner's who make hats. How many hours she worked at a stretch. So she talks about all of the hours she worked. She says how the day after Christmas she's going to lie abed because she works such long hours the rest of the time. This is her one chance to have a bit of a lie and relax. And obviously there's Tiny Tim, who is the Victorian ideal again of innocent children. Tim is pure, he's innocent, he's full of joy at Christmas despite his illness. The fact that he is known as Tiny Tim, even by his own family, shows how weak and feeble he is. Dickens says, even Tiny Tim beat on the table with his knife and feebly cried hurrah, always using these adjectives and adverbs to show how weak he is. He's also very religious. He obviously had the famous line, God bless us, everyone. But he also, at one point when they go to church, he says, it might be pleasant to them to remember upon Christmas Day who made lame beggars walk and blind men see. So he's a physical representation of that biblical story. The ghost says, if things continue as they are, Tim will die. Only Scrooge, and thereby society, can stop innocent people dying in this way. The ghost says, I see a vacant seat and a crutch without an owner. So he uses Tim as a symbol of how Scrooge's change, and therefore society's change, can make life better for individuals.